President Biden is pledging a change in America's approach to foreign policy compared to the Trump administration. Tonight, we want to go in depth on our country's role in the world with just the facts, no opinion. This week, President Biden talked with Russian President Vladimir Putin as that country deals with protests over the poisoning we mentioned and jailing of a Putin political rival. And today, new Secretary of State Antony Blinken took his oath of office. Vice President Harris swore him in. Blinken has said he agrees with the Trump administration's stance on China over human rights and its assertiveness in the South China Sea. He did, however, signal that the Biden administration wants to bring Iran back into compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. NewsNation national political correspondent Dean Reynolds talked to a former ambassador about this today, and he joins us now. Dean?
Joe, U.S. foreign policy will sound different from the previous administration's America First approach, and newly installed Secretary of State Antony Blinken indicated today Russia will be among the first countries to get the message. Antony Blinken is 58 years old and a veteran foreign policy advisor to both Presidents Obama and Biden.
I know the State Department that I'm walking into today is not the same one that I left 4 years ago. A lot has changed. The world has changed.
Later at a press conference, the new secretary wasted no time in taking a tougher line on Vladimir Putin's Russia and indicated a full review of its behavior is underway.
We're looking at the reports of bounties placed by Russia on American forces in Afghanistan. And of course, we're looking at these questions of election interference.
Blinken said he is especially concerned by the Kremlin's treatment of Putin's political opponent, Alexei Navalny, who Mr. Blinken said was the victim of an apparent Russian government attempt to assassinate him last summer and who is now being held in a Russian prison. President Biden has called for Navalny's immediate release, and today, Secretary Blinken elaborated.
It remains striking to me how concerned and maybe even scared the Russian government seems to be of one man, Mr. Navalny.
Elsewhere, the secretary said the relationship with China, which has become more assertive in the last decade, is arguably the most important the U.S. has in the world.
Increasingly, that relationship has some adversarial aspects to it. It has competitive ones, and it also still has cooperative ones.
Former Ambassador Ian Kelly, who served under Barack Obama and Donald Trump, said Mr. Trump's policy on China was a valuable wake-up call.
I think that they really raised awareness of the American people about China and China's attempts, to not be a bona fide good actor in trade or in management of its currency. So I think that is that's an overall plus.
In the Middle East, Secretary Blinken said he supports the so-called Abraham Accords, which were peace deals overseen by the Trump administration between Israel, Morocco, Bahrain, Sudan, and the United Arab Emirates. Relations with Iran, he said, will take a long time to improve. Ambassador Kelly said he believes that overall, the Biden foreign policy will be closer to Mr. Obama's.
I think the similarity is a determination to act in concert with our allies, not to have an America First attitude or a confrontational attitude with our allies, and that's a good thing.
Secretary Blinken said he's already spoken to several of his foreign counterparts and that there was a common thread to all the conversations. It was, he said, a very, very strong desire for the United States to be back in the room, back at the table, working with them on the common challenges we face. Marnie?
Dean, thank you. And continuing on this subject and taking an even deeper dive into the Biden administration's pledge to, in the president's words, repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, we turn to Richard Stoll. He is a political science professor at Rice University. Professor, thanks for your time tonight. Given your knowledge of international conflict, let's just start with where Dean left off there, talking about adversaries, and we're talking Russia, North Korea, even China. What do you expect from the Biden administration in addressing those nations on that front?
I think with regards to Russia, you will see a somewhat harder line than the Trump administration. I don't see Russia, and I don't think the Biden administration sees them as like an enemy who's about to wage war on us. But we clearly have strong disagreements on a number of issues. But I also expect them to work hard on those issues where maybe we can work together with Russia, say on arms control and arms agreements. China is a rising power. Most people who look at the size of economies say that China will pass the U.S. in terms of size. So 2028, something like that. You can expect a country that's becoming that powerful to sort of exercise its power. So I expect us to have a mixed relationship. We do want to make sure that China doesn't do anything to harm our friends in the Pacific. And I think you'll see the Biden administration, both in the Pacific and in Europe, reaching out to work with our friends more so than the Trump administration did. Iran is an actor that we need to be concerned about. I believe they want to be the dominant force in the Middle East. I think they're, again, as with most countries, there are things we can work with them. I do support the Biden administration trying to restart the nuclear agreement, but that doesn't take care of a number of other things. Iran supplies groups, supports groups that work against the interests of the United States and our friends in the Middle East, and we're going to have to keep opposing them on that. So I think it's going to be a complicated, interesting period of time.
What about North Korea?
North Korea, I've told people, I don't think President Trump is going to get them to change what they're trying to accomplish, but I wish him the very best. I think that we have to watch them. I would support any effort to come to an agreement whereby they get rid of their nuclear weapons. I think, unfortunately, that's highly unlikely, but I think we should keep trying to do that. Of course, we have to support our friends in the region, in particular South Korea, and let North Korea know that any action against South Korea would be considered totally unacceptable and definitely involve the United States. And going back to China just for a second, there are a number of issues where the U.S. and China don't agree, but I think both the U.S. and China do agree that they don't want North Korea sort of strutting its stuff and getting out of line. So that working with them can, A, help us in Asia and in terms of reining in North Korea, but B, perhaps make for better relationships between the United States and China.
Finally, Professor, Secretary Blinken also addressed a need for more diversity in the State Department. Why is that important in diplomacy and also developing a strategy for foreign policy?
I think it's important for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want our very best people in the State Department, and we don't care about race, ethnicity, gender. We want our very best. And we are supposed to be a leading light to the world about promoting democracy, and if you're good enough, you ought to be able to get to the top of the heap. And it just doesn't work as well if we say that, but yet the State Department is totally dominated by a bunch of people like me, old white guys. Okay, so I think we benefit from other people's experience and their intelligence, and it sends a much better message, much more consistent with what we're trying to accomplish in the world.
Well, the president certainly said so on Inauguration Day, that the U.S. would be leading by example, so we'll see on foreign policy how they are able to deliver on that promise. Professor Richard Stoll, political science with Rice University, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Joe.